Burning, 2018 Korean film based on a short story Barn Burning by Haruki Murakami, the Japanese novelist. It's a slow and patient mix of a character study, thriller, and social critique. So the story is centered around three characters. Jong-su is the main protagonist. He is a young man, educated but without perspectives on career or wealth. He comes from a family of farmers living outside of Seoul, close to the North Korean border, and he dreams of being a writer, but doesn't seem to be doing all that much in that direction. One day, he randomly runs into a girl he knows from childhood, called Haemi. He doesn't instantly recognize her due to some plastic surgery that she underwent in the meantime, but the girl is clearly interested in him. They meet up a couple of more times and even have sex at her apartment. Then she leaves for a trip to Africa for some time, and after coming back, she introduces Jong-soo to Ben, the only other Korean person who she met while delayed at the airport on the way back. Ben is shrouded in this air of mystery. He's clearly obscenely rich, lives in a nice apartment, drives a Porsche, overall a person from a different class than the other two. But he never really gives away too much about himself. Jong-soo is wondering about, what exactly Ben does for a living, where does the money come from, who he really is. And the plot goes from there. And for the first half, I'd say it is very reminiscent of Murakami's writing style. I haven't really read this particular story of his, but there is this unique atmosphere to his writing overall that permeates Burning as well. The film is unhurried, almost fleeting. It doesn't rush anywhere. It seems to be content to let us just spend a lot of time with the characters. There's a slight air of melancholy and regret, especially as we get to learn more about Jong-soo himself and see him further and further contrasted with Ben in every way possible, especially as Haemi begins to gravitate towards the richer man. But the story, weirdly enough, is in no way heavy. If I had to put it in words somehow, I'd describe it as the feeling of summer vacation that you know you're kind of wasting away by not doing anything special with the time, but on the other hand, kind of enjoyed the time seemingly wasted. A lot of the scenes have this easy and cool breeze about them. I think it's enhanced mainly by the way the film is shot. There are a lot of long single takes, and the camera tends to linger on a lot of those shots for longer than may be expected. It gives time for the story to breathe without necessarily moving it forward. And in that regard, my absolute favorite scene of the film happens at Jong-soo's old house when the three are drinking at sunset and Haemi bursts into dance. It's just a gorgeous couple of frames right there. And then something changes around halfway through. I won't say what exactly happens, but it pushes Jong-soo into this spiral of paranoia towards Ben. He begins to suspect that the rich guy is not just this careless, free spirit, but has a darker side to him as well, and some dark secrets. And so Jong-soo tries to uncover the truth about him. And that's when the movie becomes more of a thriller and loses some of that fleeting coolness, but gains a lot of suspense in return. What's interesting is we continue to watch things unravel through the eyes of Jong-soo almost exclusively, and we're never really given solid answers. There's a ton of ambiguity about the plot, and it's basically left to us to decide what we want to believe. Is there something ominous about Ben, or is it all in Jong-soo's head? Is he jealous of all the things that the other man has that Jong-soo cannot hope for? And that's also where the biggest theme of the film comes in, which is this social critique, the contrast between the educated but disenfranchised youth of old traditional Korea, so to speak, and the careless, comfortable people who wallow in new money, new wealth coming in from the West. Jong-soo's tragedy comes partly from the fact that he himself is more concerned with that envy and jealousy and basically living inside his head and his dreams than actually doing something about pursuing them. But also from the way that he is a victim of his circumstances. Because of his family situation, he's not really in a position to just go and be successful. He has other things that he's tied down by, and he's also frustrated because the example of Ben doesn't really tell him specifically what to do to be successful because of that mystery of Ben's origins. Here I need to praise Steven Yeun for his performance as Ben. He basically steals every single scene he's in. And I don't think I've seen this type of character on film yet. He's at the same time emotionless and detached and insanely charismatic and simply pleasant to watch and be around, which seems like two completely opposite things, to be detached and be charismatic, but here he pulls it off. And the easy smile, the way he always acts like he's completely comfortable with everything and everyone around him, the subtle air of being totally in control. I think it takes a lot of ability to convey all of that, and a lot of restraint in your acting ability to play the role the way he does. And his performance is, I dare say, the most important one of the film, because he's the motor behind the story, really. Because of him, Hayami and Jong-su's lives change, and the entire plot even takes place. And I just used the word restraint in regards to the acting, but I think that it should also be noted about the use of music in the film. Most of the scenes are not scored at all, and the music is used scarcely and responsibly, which I think in this case is an interesting but solid choice, because the director will let many of the scenes play out without that additional layer of sound, which would inform us on how to interpret a scene, and leave even more ambiguity thanks to that. So, he leaves the interpretation of the tone to us. Like, are we on board with Jong-su, and do we consider this scene creepy and uneasy? Or do we think he's imagining things to some degree and it's completely innocent? There isn't a track playing that would push us one way or the other, which enhances even further that feeling of mystery. So, to bring all of this together somehow, I think that Burning is not an easy film to watch. When you compare it with, say, Parasite, which is also another Korean film, also kind of criticizing the disparity between classes, which was released more recently, I think that the newer film is much more accessible to everyone. Burning is more entrenched in the Korean culture and history and socio-economic situation, which means it's more difficult to digest by a Western viewer. But as that can be a weakness to some, it is a strength to others, because Burning is not obvious and leaves you slightly confused. It really gives the audience food for thought. You have to engage with it on an intellectual level and put in some conscious effort to really understand and take something away from it. More than an easy entertainment, it chooses to be an intellectual puzzle. And I'm not sure everyone will love the film for that, but I certainly did.